time. Open up the kitchen with Nestle.
Nestle, the food good life.
Give cold and food keep a step ahead. With Anglo-Bill Echinopause. Unlike many other echinacea remedies, the natural goodness of Echinopause is squeezed fresh from the plant, giving you a natural remedy that offers greater protection against cold and flu. It's proven to support your immune system, helping to prevent and treat infection. Anglo-Bill Echinopause, natural goodness, natural protection.
So welcome back to all. We are also today with this traditional music from the Fiji, and in fact we are now in this event that's called Fostering Climate Dialogue Through Talanoa in Action. In practice, sorry. And today we are in the third table of our session that's related to climate change and global rights. But before jumping into the session itself, I will spend a few words about the environment in which we are doing this initiative. We are the Climate Social Forum, and we are doing this initiative inside the framework of open dialogue on climate change. This framework has been fostered by a group of youth activists mainly from Yango, but not only from different climate associations. They are also part of the PCCB, so the Paris Committee on Capacity Building. And the mission of the open dialogues is to foster open spaces where activists, experts, and decision makers can encounter in order to lead useful discussion on climate change and related issues. And in fact, with the Climate Social Forum, we are doing something like this because in our mission stands properly to create virtual spaces for discussion to the intertwined crisis. Just a few words about Climate Social Forum. Climate Social Forum was born as a free, inclusive, universal assembly, and our goal is to create a virtual agora where activists, citizens, experts can propose action and stimulate government and local administration to build an ecological and sustainable future. We inspire to participatory process as Talanoa we see, but also as Manifesto Climatico Latinoamericano, a big participatory process that has led during the COP25 in drafting this common manifesto for Latin America that has been presented also at the Cumbre Social in Madrid. And the virtual agora has consisted in a series of conferences where experts and activists has met towards the discussion among some climate action paths. We will see how the climate action paths has been designed. And basically, the virtual space we want to achieve is a very free, inclusive, and safe environment. In fact, we base our discussion on inclusive principles that can be summarized in three keywords that are listen, generativity, and solution. Here you can see listed all the principles. I will not repeat. You can find that also on our website, that is climatesocialforum.org. And the main principle indeed is that we are on the same boat, as Talanoa means, and only if we remain together and we are swimming together, we can prevent the storm from happening. We are based, as I said, on Talanoa dialogue. That is a traditional methodology that's come from Fiji and from Pacific Island to reflect an inclusive, participatory, and transparent process. The idea is to share stories, build empathy, and make wise decisions for the collective good. The Talanoa methodology is running into three main questions that are where we are, so which is the current state of art, where do we want to go, so which is our goal, and how do we get there, so the methods and strategies that we can use for achieving the second question that is related to the goal and purposes. Here you can see in red also some mapping of another methodology for decision making in groups, that is sociocracy. And basically the Talanoa dialogue reflects the transparency of decision making, the equivalence, so everyone is on the same floor, and efficiency, so to have also feedback from the audience. We performed last year the first edition of Climate Social Forum, and as I said, we ran into 12 tracks for having in total 70 speakers among different topics that you can see here. And yes, here you can see the video that I'm not sure here for the time purposes, but you can find on our website and on our YouTube page that resumes the 1 week on virtual event that we had last year. We decided to perform a participatory engagement also of participants in order to produce some output documents. And in fact, we are producing the output documents properly now. We are drafting the final version of that, and then our outputs will be proceedings of the conference, and some suggestions that are coming from the activists and the virtual agora, standing 3 levels of governance, so the local level, national level, and global level. You can find also in the social media that we have a Facebook page, we have a Facebook group that we call the community, that we invite you to join. And to join, you can also reach our website and at this address that you can see here, and you can join in different manner, as a volunteer, or as a group or organization, if you have one, as a speaker. So kindly invite also to propose you as a speaker. We want to give voice to what we call unconventional speakers, so also the ones that maybe are not very notorious, but surely can have something to say. And here you can find our social media and Facebook page. Just reach us, and also reach our YouTube channel, in which you can see there listed all the intervention that we held last year. So now I will stop my discussion regarding the Climate Social Forum, and I will start with the works of today. So we have a very, very rich panel that try to gather all the voices of different stakeholders on the topic of climate change and human rights. So I just list the names of the speaker, and then I will let them to introduce themselves. So we have Alka, that is the Yango Human Rights Working Group focal point. Thank you, Alka, for being here. We have Shantanu Mandai, that is thematic facilitator for the environment and faith in the steering committee of UNEP NGCY. And Youth Climate Contact for Brahma Kumaris. And then we have Carla Nide-Guyam, that has been Youth 7 delegate related to climate and environment. Then we have Francesco Postiglione, that is a politologist, and we welcome back also Elsa Ferrario from the Ecumenic Council of Churches that, as yesterday, will state the position of the churches on the topic. So let's start with Alka. You have the floor to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. So, hi everyone, my name is Alka and I'm 19 years old. I am from Malaysia and I currently serve as one of two focal points of NGOs Human Rights Working Group. Apart from my involvement in NGO, I co-lead the capacity building working group in the Malaysian Youth Delegation, a Malaysian youth-led climate organization. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alka. Now the floor to Shantanu.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good night, because I know everybody is from a very different time zone here. So Zoom has really changed the world and it has made it very small for all of us. So my name is Shantanu and I'm 32 years old. I am the thematic facilitator for environment and faith in the steering committee of UNEP MGCY. And I have been active in the climate mitigation scene for quite some years now. And it's been quite a learning phase for me. So hope I learned a lot from you all today as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantanu. Then we have Carla.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today. So my name is Carla Guillaume and I'm Canadian, but currently based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I was this year's Canadian delegate for the G7 Youth Summit, sitting on the climate and the environment policy track. To give you a little bit more background about me, I am a master's student in public policy and administration in Montreal. I'm currently working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Canada, also known as Global Affairs. And outside of that, I am working on a number of development projects related to gender equity. And I'm part of the WSP USA Youth Advisory Council, focusing on climate resilience and green infrastructure. And of course, I'm here today because climate resilience, climate adaptation, finance, and crisis management need to be addressed in a human rights lens. And I'm very passionate about those issues because they put people and communities at the forefront of climate change discussions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from my co-panelists.
Thank you very much, Carla. Very glad to have you here also in the context of this G7. That's very important also in our relationship with the human rights. And now, Francesco, the floor is yours to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. I'm Francesco Postiglione from Italy. I'm 46 years old, and actually my actual work is a school headmaster, but I was studying political philosophy since I was 20 years old. And my aim in studying political philosophy is philosophy of rights, of human rights. And I was a member of Amnesty International Italy section. I was member of National Council, Italian National Council of Amnesty International. And so my studies went to meet my experience as a member of Amnesty International, and since then I had this experience of a expert in philosophy themes about human rights and a member of activism in human rights. Not especially of climate human rights, but human rights in general. But this is maybe one of the reasons why I am here at the moment, because some ideas can be usefully applied to the climate problems we are living at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesco. And we greet again also Elsa Ferrario from the Ecumenic Council of the Churches. And Elsa will state also the point of views of the Ecumenic Council. Is also one of the relevant stakeholders. So Elsa, the floor is to you to introduce yourself and to state your points.
Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Elsa Ferrario. I'm responsible for the Milan group of the SAE, Secretariat for Ecumenical Activities, an interconfessional association of lay people for ecumenism and dialogue, starting from the Jewish-Christian dialogue. Thank you for invitation. Congratulations to Domenico and the organizers all for having created this amazing meeting. I'm very glad and honored to be here with you all. And I'd like to tell you about an ecumenical document written in Milan last year. And I will listen some parts of it during next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa. So now maybe we can run to the first question. Then I will pose the question to all the speakers. You can respond in the same order I've stated at the beginning. So let's start properly to warm up with a very introductory question. And this is basic, but it helps us to go into the topic. And the question is, how is climate change and human rights issues connected into your opinion? So let's start with Alka.
Thank you so much. So I'll give this one an introductory answer and keep it really short. Extreme climate change can get us all killed. If something as serious as that is not a human rights issue, then I don't know what is. So yeah, that is my answer.
Smart answer. Thank you very much, Alka, for your point. And Shantanu, the floor to you.
So thank you so much, Alka. It was short, sweet, and crisp. For me, if I have to share my opinion on how climate change and human rights are connected, we all have, since our very beginning of education, through our culture, through our texts, through our parents, everybody has told us that with rights, you also have duties. They never go single-handed, you know, they always walk two hands. You have rights, so you also have duties. So we human beings do have rights on the resources provided by Mother Nature. So do we also have duties towards her? What has happened is that we have just used our rights over her, but not done any of the duties well enough. As a result, the climate changed. So this is an example where the rights were overused without using the proper amount of duties, without taking care of them. And so that change is now implying on us on a larger scale, on our personal individual levels, at the level of communities, at the level of countries, and at the level of it has become a global issue. So I believe that climate change and human rights, they do come together because humans were the one who overexploited their rights and underdid their duties. And so it is us who have to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantanu. The floor to Carla.
Thank you, Alka and Shantanu. Shantanu, it's a great point. It's true that rights comes with duty, and we need to put that really in the center of the discussion. For me, in terms of the work that I've been doing in my community, and especially as a Youth 7 delegate, I want to say that, you know, climate change is a human rights issue because the state of our planet today really reflects centuries of greed, wasteful commercial practices, and also colonialism. The world's most industrialized countries, including Canada, have plundered the resources of many nations and communities whose people now have to face the consequences of environmental degradation that they did not cause without the help of those who are responsible for it, and those are the richest countries in the world. So when we look at what is going on in countries like Ethiopia right now, or Haiti, where I have been working now for some time, or even indigenous communities in America, Canada, or around the world, we often think that, the issues that they're facing are because of politics or economics, when in reality, they are picking up the pieces of a broken system that they inherited from rich countries. And the effects of climate change, I would say, are really a form of oppression that we have to work to denounce. And we have to be aware that talking about climate change is not just about talking about the environment. Climate change is necessary talking about climate change is necessary to safeguard our planet and to make sure that girls, for instance, are able to go to school without having to worry about floods. We have to talk about climate change to make sure that rural communities can continue to grow food and sustain themselves and not import products from rich countries, which would destroy their culture and their economies. We have to talk also about water scarcity. We need to make sure that water is accessible to all to prevent conflicts within groups. And we need all of this to create the right setting to allow vulnerable communities and countries to be politically and economically stable, which is really the foundation and prerequisite for development, economically speaking, but socially speaking as well, and democracy. And if you allow me, I'd also like to talk about the green transition. And we like to talk about building back better and how this is also a human rights issue. In a lot of countries that are advanced economies like Canada or the US or even in Europe, vulnerable communities don't have the resources to protect their assets or adapt to or prepare to the numerous risks posed by climate change. And unfortunately, many of them work in informal sectors that are not accounted for by governments when they lay out their green transition plans. So as many of these people rely on carbon intensive industries and activities, it's easy for people who are privileged to say, yeah, we want to, go into the green economy, talk about clean technology. But what do we do with people who don't have the education or the skills? What do we do with inner cities or countries that don't have the infrastructure to welcome the new technologies? What do we do with countries who are looking to grow their economy now, but have to face environmental regulation, carbon pricing, which a lot of the rich countries didn't have to think about when they were growing their own economies. So it's really a question of making sure that the discussion is fair, and that although we are very ambitious and that we want to make things happen, we also don't erase the realities and the inequalities that already exist in that system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla, for your insights. And now the floor to Francesco.
Yeah, climate change, according to me, it's the principal human rights issue at the moment, actually, because of its urgency, first of all, but because it's a problem of rights of humans all over the world, not only plants or animals, just like some fools can think or some propagandists can think. Because if we think about climate migrants, desertification, water conflicts, as Carla said before, these are problems of humans and are problems of equity, of fairness all over the world. Climate change is a human rights issue, mostly because it's a purely international theme, purely international theme regarding all humans. And as I said, it's a problem of equity. It's an international problem, so nothing can be done if it is not done by some decisions in international organizations. With international and globally democratic actions, we need some new method to take decisions about climate change, because as everyone can see, if China starts making some points, but not USA or South Africa or Brazil, we are at the same point as before. So this fact means that we have to rethink the human rights universal declaration doctrines and all the mechanism in the United Nations, and we have to rethink the rules on which the decision in this international mechanism are taken, because actually these are not fair rules. These are not democratic rules. Not every country of the world is fairly represented in United Nations. And this is not only a problem of climate, but in the climate theme, there is the principal urgency about that. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights exists, as you know, since 1948, but it's a long time. In that times, climate problem did not exist, or it wasn't perceived in its urgency. Now we have to rethink all the human rights doctrine, starting from the fact that there is one problem involving everyone, involving everyone, not in the same fair process. Let's start thinking that if US did not stop emissions, another part of the world can have consequences about this, and this is a problem of fairness.
Thank you, Francesco. Elsa, do you want to add something on the point of view of the ecumenic churches?
Thank you, Domenico. So, Taking Root in the New is an ecumenical document written last year in June 2020, in time of pandemic, by a group of friends, citizens, and Christians of different churches in Milan, who wanted to imagine and plan for the post-pandemic. Several people, churches, associations in Italy and also from other countries have then signed a document that says, the pandemic has clearly shown that we all live in the same house. The answer to this global health crisis and to this long-lasting colossal economic and ecological emergency must recognize our implicit interdependence. This requires, as the JPI seek, Justice, Peace, Integrity of Creation, founded by the World Council of Churches, has shown us, cooperation and solidarity within and between countries, part of the network of faith communities, civil society, and social movements, as well as new systems of global governance based on justice, on stewardship, and on sustainability, what is called an integrated ecology. Through this action and in this spirit, if we are sufficiently daring, it will be possible to find ways to reroute our systems, institutions, and hearts, not in the old order, but in a new creation. We want to envisage this as the kairos, the right moment in which to act and put to use our gifts of service for the communal good, playing our part, cultivating the desire for rebirth, not the insidious call to go back to the previous insane normality. We have listed 5 central points for change for a necessary conversion. The first, old and new kinds of poverty. The second, refugees, migrants, and citizenship. The third, healthcare. The fourth, environmental crisis, stewardship, and safeguarding of creation. The fifth, Europe. Each chapter presents an analysis, a commitment for the churches on the model of the Carta Ecumenica signed by European churches in 2001, and requests to the political civil world.
Thank you, Elsa. So let's move to the question number 2 that I will briefly state. Let's go more into the topic. We already in some of the answer that you get go into the second question, but how do you think climate change has let us understand that human rights respect need to be globally granted? So how do we understand that climate change in a way is a problem of global human rights, not just of a local respect, but of a global respect of human rights? So let's start from Alka.
Thank you so much. So I think the first thing that pops to mind is that climate change is a global issue. So naturally, it should allow for global rights. Because I mean, this is a really good question earlier. Climate change disproportionately affects the poor, minorities, indigenous communities, and more. And yet, for the most part, was propagated by colonialism. So it isn't fair for someone else to suffer the damage caused by another person. And moving on, talking about local rights, in where human rights are valued and cared for, because not everyone shares the same experience. And with climate change, I see the unfairness even more clearly. Suffering barely a brunt of what they did compared to the developing countries who are suffering a lot, like Bangladesh. So when we put that into perspective, we realize that this isn't just a one person problem. This is an every person problem. This is a global issue. Because at the end of the day, rich or poor, global north or global south, or whoever you are, if we go down, we're all going down together. So it's only fair that if we are protected, we're all protected equally, and everyone receives that same equal rights. So yeah, I think that's where the connection lies for me.
Thank you very much, Alka, and thank you for your statement that very appreciated. Shantanu, the floor is yours for your point.
Thank you so much, Alka. Very nicely stated that it's everybody's problem. Even earlier, Francesca also said that, and Elsa also was mentioning that I see this analogy of a boat. We all are traveling in the same boat, and if water starts seeping in from one corner of the boat, how long is it going to take to come to the another corner? It's very soon. It's now or next now. So it's foolish for us to think it's not my problem. It's foolish for us to think that it's their problem. It is our problem, and it is our aim to bring a solution for it. I'll give you a very simple example. Suppose we 10 people are living in one house and we are children of the same family. Some of us are elders, some of us are very young. Some of us have started growing good teeth, so we can chew fast, eat a lot, and digest fast. Others have started growing them. They are taking their time to chew slowly, digest slowly, assimilate slowly. That doesn't give us the rights to eat up more food so that they are left with less food. You see? So this little awareness that we all are a part of family, this awareness has gone. Few days back, I was in a food systems dialogue, and there was someone who was speaking about the producers, the transporters, this, that. And I realized that the way we are using the vocabularies to call out people, the transporter is a people, he's a human. The producer, he's a human, he's a man with flesh and emotions. We are calling them transporters, we are calling them producers, we are calling them farmers, we are just calling them with their occupations. The first right is dignity, the first right is respect and regard. We have lost that in terms of our vocabulary and our language. Imagine a child starts calling his father, if his father is a doctor, 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 and stops calling him dad. That connection is losing out, you know. So what I would suggest is the lack of awareness that what I am living a life of is a life of lack of awareness is leading me into a life of more selfishness, is leading me into a life of more death from the future generation I am taking from them. So until and unless I bring my awareness to a level where I start recognizing people and their livelihood and their situation around me, I cannot be happy. And just like in a home of 4 rooms, if we are living in a home of 4 rooms, and suppose Alka is sitting in one room and sobbing and crying because Carla has taken her toy and is playing aggressively with her toy, how can Dominic or you and me be happy living in the another 2 rooms? Because the vibrations of Alka's sobbing will never let the entire family be happy. It cannot happen that just 7 or 8 or 10 countries are supremely happy and 70 and 80 countries are just sobbing to play with a little toy which is just very basic for them. So this lack of awareness at individual level, the lack of awareness at a community level, the lack of awareness at a global level is something that is the crucial most root to the problem of global crisis on human rights. That would be my point.
Thank you very much, Shantanu. And now the floor to Carla.
Thank you. We've heard amazing points and comparisons. It's making me think a lot. But I would have to say, on my perspective, why is this a global issue? I would say that, our livelihoods and even our economy, or, everything that we do now is so interconnected. And, Shantanu said it at the beginning, we have Zoom now to be everywhere in the world and have the same conversation around, on a Zoom call. And we see how our world now is so interconnected. And I know a lot of people sometimes lack of compassion and don't realize why it's so important to care about communities and countries that are less fortunate. But let's look at a more pragmatic, picture. We saw with COVID that whatever happens in one country can have huge repercussions on, the day-to-day life of other countries, even in terms of supply chains, public health. So we do need to care about how the environment is taken care of in one corner of the world, and make sure that everyone is on the same, level playing field. And I have a lot of experience in development. And, we talked about it, colonialism, how a lot of the rich countries have had the chance to develop thanks to, the resources that they have extracted from other countries. But, those countries are now left with a shattered community. And it's also a question of security. When people go into conflicts because they don't have water, when they can't grow food, when people do not have access to education anymore because of extreme weather conditions, they're not going to stay over there, waiting until it passes. People who are sitting in their advanced economies, in their, industrialized countries, they're going to have to face the consequences of that. A few years ago, we've talked about, the refugee crisis. Well, another refugee crisis is coming, but this time it's going to be environmental refugees or climate refugees. So it's important for us, even when we are comfortable, to realize that the system that we have right now is not sustainable. We're not going to be able to plan projects, to plan communities, if we don't make sure that other communities are also taken care of. And I have to say that it's also a transgenerational issue. As a Youth 7 delegate, the G7 has made sure that they're engaging with groups like Women 7 or Youth 7 to make sure that, their policies actually reach the communities that are going to be, making them happen. And young people, we are the ones leading the climate discussions. We are the one making sure that we educate our parents. We are the one deploying the projects and making sure that the policies that are discussed at higher levels make sense on the ground. So we need to make sure that everyone that has a stake in that discussion is also consulted. Because, if Justin Trudeau and Boris Johnson are having discussions about, clean transition, and people who are going to be working in those plants, people who are going to be consuming the green energy don't agree or don't understand, they're having those discussions for nothing. So that's why the diversity and inclusion and making this a global fight is so important, because otherwise it's just not going to happen.
Thank you very much, Carla. And you have mentioned also the intergenerational equity in a way in your words, and it's a very important topic. Thank you for your point. To Francesco now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's obvious that if, for example, as I said before, USA reduced their emissions, but none of this is made by China or another big country, the climate situation could not improve. So this is the first example that climate change has let us understand that human rights are to be globally granted. And climate change has made clear that we have to act together, just like one, because the hillman now is the entire planet, and not one part or another of it. As Alka said before, if we go down all together. I really appreciate this slogan, and maybe this is the first time in history that the problem is really everywhere and doesn't make difference among different regions of the world, rich or poor, and so on. This is true, but I want to address another point that rich men actually seems to have more probability to escape the most lethal consequence of climate change, just like it is happening for COVID, for example. Okay, so as I said before, and I want to address this, this is also a problem of equity among different regions of the world, as I said, because climate change does not touch every human in the same way. This is more unfair than ever, because with the climate, with climate, no one can seriously say that, for example, African people is responsible of their destiny, as some foods, as said before, for colonialism or for migrations and so on. In the climate issue, no one is responsible of his destiny, because climate is changing, as we know all, for industrializations. And this is not a problem of poor regions of the world, but this is a consequence of what rich regions of the world has made in the last century. So another point I want to say is that the consequences of climate changing are naturally international in this kind of sense. For example, a lot of emissions in the USA can have as a consequence a tsunami in South Africa or Australia, and it's impossible to study the limit of consequences of some emissions or some pollutions in an area of the world from another area of the world. So I will conclude. As it always has been in history, humans start to understand that they are one unique race in the world only when there is a problem, only when there is an entire global risk. It was happening with the atomic bomb after Hiroshima, and now it is happening again with the pandemic emergency, as Elsa said. So we have to teach from the pandemic emergency, to teach that the problems are to be addressed in a global sense, in a global way, and with the global decisions, but they have to be democratic global decisions.
Thank you, Francesco. And Elsa, I don't know if you want to add something.
Yes, I would like to read to you what the document Taking Root in the News says about refugees, migrants, and citizenship. We have given in to fake news and to propaganda, which have made the extremely important phenomenon of migrations the cause of every crime and the expiation for every social negligence, creating alarm and anger based on false emergencies and generating a new racism. Rebirth means giving back to migrants their faces, dignity, and the right to exist. Not only does it mean demanding the regularization for hundreds of thousands of foreign workers, those who pick the fruit and vegetables which come fresh to our tables, caregivers and babysitters who look after our dear ones, but also those who are seeking asylum. Decisive action is needed to ensure that the humanitarian corridors are an effective way of removing human flesh from the hands of traffickers, and thus their source of wealth. The search for a new mentality includes the need to recognize the humanitarian work of NGOs. We think it might sometimes be legitimate to criticize them on specific actions, but it is necessary also to reiterate that saving a life is an absolute essential obligation and that no law can and must make help given at sea or land a crime. Neither must we forget the urgency of extending the right to citizenship of youngers, children of migrants, attending schools in Italy, Ius Culturae. As churches, we have already taken steps, also at an ecumenical level, promoting, for instance, the humanitarian corridors, to further a culture of reception and of inclusion, or perhaps only of justice and rights, to provide more organization and dignity to the migratory flows. We realize that we can and must do more, both in raising awareness, both in and outside our communities, providing concrete help. We ask that our politicians, both Italian and European, review the policies of closed borders and the policies of passing the buck, which have eroded the intra-community relationships. We want new norms for the promotion of residency permits and for the social and work inclusion of non-European citizens and foreign citizens, and the abolition of the crime of being considered clandestine.
Thank you, Elsa. So let's move to the third and last question from the panel. Then we will receive some questions that are coming from the participants. And so one of the very topics also regarding human rights are the environmental laws and how to strengthen the environmental or climate change laws to control rapid climate change that we are facing. So the floor to Alka.
Thank you. Let me preface this with a disclaimer that I am not an expert on law, but at least from the point of view of a teenager, we can and should push our governments to recognize the right to a healthy environment as a human right. And this is actually an initiative that I've been following by the Children's Environmental Right Initiative, or CERI, and they're working together with UNICEF on this. They launched a declaration at COP25 on the need for the right to a healthy environment. So far, 15 countries have signed on, and if you look onto CERI's website, you can even sign on to urge your government to adopt this declaration. So in my point of view, this would certainly help to assert the need for laws to protect the environment. Of course, there are many other ways, and I would love to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Thank you very much, Alka. Shantanu, to you.
Thank you, Alka. And I do remember the declaration day when it was happening. And there was a big joy in the crowd when they realized that the declaration was accepted. That joy gives me an idea here that if we are making laws, and if those laws are not instantly bringing joy to the people for whom it has been made, that means there is some loophole in those laws. So there has to be, with laws, a certain amount of substantial feedback mechanism that looks into the efficiency of the laws that has been made. And those feedback mechanisms, the laws, for example, the human rights, these are being taught to the to the school children, to teenagers, but they are not efficiently taught about the feedback mechanisms through which they can really understand whether their rights are being violated or not. Many people might not be even knowing that their rights are being violated. So is there a system, because laws are being made by people who are just making them because they are experts in making laws, but are they also experts in creating feedbacks that check their own laws that they have created? That is something very important. So instead of me giving you an idea on how these laws could work, I would simply put a question for everyone to think upon: what is the best feedback mechanism to see whether the laws are really working, first? And secondly, if these laws are not working, then what is the substitute for it? Is there an immediate substitute? because when I am hurt, I would not like to wait for somebody to, take years and years for me to give back the happiness, give back the peace that I have lost when I was hurt. So the feedback mechanism should have that substantial power to bring back an instant remedy, bring back an instant balm for my pain. So is there a feedback mechanism? That would be my question. And also that would be the idea that I would like to leave everybody with to think upon.
Thank you very much, Shantanu, for the enlightening question that you posed to us. And I'll give the floor now to Carla.
Thank you. Yes, feedback mechanisms are very important. And one of the criticisms that the legal system faces in a lot of aspects, not only in climate, is that the process of making those laws are not transparent. And how do people who are negatively affected by those laws can effectively hold leaders accountable to make sure that we change them? One of the issues that I see with laws to protect the environment is that they pretty much depend on domestic systems. And unfortunately, not everywhere lives in a democracy or in a country where it's easy, to voice your opinion and say that you're not happy about something. Even in Canada, we have a beautiful democracy, but it's very hard to actually make sure that your voice is heard for numerous reasons. So I think this is why international law and international cooperation is so important, because it allows us to create this space where, I wouldn't say where we shame, but where we hold each other accountable. And there is this common sense that everybody needs to work together. And this allows, certain countries who don't have the domestic mechanisms to make good laws or strong enough laws to protect the environment, to feel like when they're part of the group, internationally speaking, they have to rise up to the occasion. And we've seen that with many countries outside of climate for human rights issues, the ability of each other to call out the other on things that they haven't done properly. I think this is something that we should push. And forums like us play a big role in that. Our leaders are sometimes too busy to see when their other colleagues in another country are messing up. So they need to open their ears to make sure that civil society is helping them call out countries that are not respecting the environment, and how international pressure can actually help those countries do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carla. The floor to Francesco.
Thanks, Domenico. This is my question, because maybe I was invited here just for this reason, because I wrote a long article about this problem, which is being published in Italian magazine, actually. And my article did not talk about especially about climate laws, but laws in general. I will go back to the point made by Shantanu. A philosopher in the last century said that no law could exist without a coercive power that make respect of the law itself. This philosopher was Kelsen. Climate laws, just like every international laws, according to me, actually lack of coercive power. What happens to the state which does not respect climate rules? Actually, nothing. Nothing is the answer. So how can we change this fact? According to me, we have to reform the UN decisioning mechanism, and it can be applied to every theme regarding human rights. So even to the climate, to the climate issue or the climate problem. Actually, UN and all their submitted committees, just like UNESCO, ACNUR, FAO, World Bank, and so on, are completely unable to represent all the states of the world. Because UN lacks of democracy. in the representative mechanism. We need a reform that strengthens that gives strength to the democratic procedures inside UN, making that all states be represented in the same way, everyone counting one. In this way, the need of, for example, Fiji or Brazil or Nigeria will count just like USA or China or Russia. And we all know that at the moment it's not so. How to go to this goal? Well, first of all, reforming the Security Council. Security Council is not democratic at all, and it's like it is nowadays like the government of all the world, but it is a government of 5 members, not democratically elected. So reforming the Security Council and giving the International Criminal Court a totally global mandate, extending this mandate to the climate crimes, we have to introduce the idea of climate crimes, like human rights crimes in other senses. Okay, and this reform, according to me, has to be the idea that has to be led by all actual peaceful protest movements that are now in Egypt or France or Georgia, the Black Lives Matter issue and so on. Everyone protesting now in the world, it seems to me that everyone wants to have human rights globally applied all over the world. So this is possible only if we reform UN. And according to me, all the protest movements in the world are not having this idea focusing on their movement. I see that all the actual protests are led by young people, and this is a good issue. And they are led towards social media, highly performed about with technological means. This is another, according to me, another good thing. But these 2 features could go to a success only if there is an idea focusing their movement. And according to me, this idea is to reform UN, introducing democracy in the UN. As you can see, it's not specifically concerning the climate change issue, but according to me, it's a method, and this method can be applied to all problems of human rights, and even so with the problem of climate change. We need a program, really a program, to ask UN to reform, and we need that this is the program, that this will be the program of every protest movements in the world.
Thank you, Francesco, for your point. Elsa, if you want to add something.
Yes, I would like to read to you what the document Taking Root in the News says about environmental crisis, stewardship, and safeguarding of creation. We are all aware that there cannot be social justice without justice for the environment. The specific interest of countries and businesses only concerned with making money have indefinitely postponed the date for the rebirth of a new widespread ecological consensus, one that really protects environment, doing all that is possible to prevent or halt a climate crisis, which otherwise will lead to new migrations and new poverties. Specific interests have prevailed over the decisions of individual states, and the great many of these have abdicated the responsibilities highlighted by climate conferences as urgent measures in order to halt pollution, such as giving up the burning of fossil fuels or changes in the transport sector. In our country, then, so far we have failed even to pass a law that really limited the use of plastic, which during lockdown actually increased. For example, we should think about the enormous quantity of disposable masks and gloves and the pre-packaged food that we are consuming at this time. Without doubt, it is extremely important to reaffirm that as human beings, we are part of creation, and thus we have a responsibility to become custodians of creation, a task entrusted to us by God Himself. For a long time now, in churches with significant declaration and far-reaching pastoral activity, we have been working to create an integral ecological awareness right from infancy, but it is necessary to increase our commitment and make it not an option, but a fundamental part of our faith. We ask those who govern us and political parties who seek the support of members of the public to put as a priority the stewardship of the environment on their agendas. This includes a review of industrial policy, which must be carried out courageously, defending the rights of workers to avoid the malicious combination of bread and poison. There is an urgent need to promote an economy that puts sustainability as a key feature in its choices, and a society that adopts distancing also with regard to the way in which it produces and inhabits our planet. Thank you for your attention. We will be happy if you want to read the document and send us your considerations. We are preparing a second edition, updated, and we are grateful for every contribution that will be sent to us. To receive the complete document, to sign it if you want, and send your comments, you can write to the email address I'm indicating in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elsa. And let me see if we can have the chance to show also the document for one moment. In the meanwhile, has arrived a very interesting question from the floor. So before going to the terminal session, we can respond to that. So this is the document that was referring to Elsa. So let's go to the question. Now I will speak out the question, and one of you speakers can respond, or more of you can respond. So let's start with the one from Jonathan. How can address gender discrimination in the fight for environmental justice? I don't know who wants to take this question.
I can go first.
Okay.
So how can we address gender discrimination in the fight for environmental justice? I think, first of all, we need to be cognizant of the fact that women are disproportionately affected by climate change. And I mentioned that earlier, but it's also the fact that, first of all, women care for their families. They are often, disadvantaged in terms of the workforce, but also because in a lot of countries, they work in informal sectors. So, women tend to not work in the big government or corporations. They tend to work and sell food or have to grow crops. And a lot of those sectors are not really taken into account by governments when they talk about climate change or when they talk about the green transition. First of all, because a lot of the time they're informal, so they don't have any way to really know how big, their contribution is to society or how impacted there will be by climate change. So this is one aspect of why women are disadvantaged when we talk about climate change, but also because of existing inequalities when, extreme weather conditions or risk or catastrophes happen, because of the role that they have and inequalities that they have, they will be the first person to carry the burden of those risks and of the effects of climate change on our societies. So how can we address gender discrimination? Is first of all, in Canada, we have what we call gender mainstreaming or gender assessment. A lot of the policies that we put together, before they are approved, they need to go through that gender assessment. So how does gender equity is included in that policy? How is this going to be affecting women, and making sure that we also prevent negative or effects of those policies on women? So I would say anyone working in the policy sector should also have a gender analysis in terms of climate. Whenever we pass a law or a regulation, there needs to be a clear understanding in terms of how this affects women. And not only that, it needs to be intersectional. So not only talk about how women are affected, but we need to talk about women in certain classes, women in certain ethnicity groups, with certain education level, and make sure that we gather the data that is necessary to make all those analyses. Otherwise, there's absolutely no way for us to understand the impact that environmental degradation has on women, but there's no way for us to actually come up with solutions that are sustainable and that actually make sense for women. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Carla, also for touching several points regarding the different manners and discrimination that women as facing regarding climate change. Someone want to add something on this question?
I think I would like to add one aspect that I cannot leave without adding, that the scenario that we see with the degradation in terms of regard and respect and the violation of rights for women is also because of the commodification of the feminine that has happened. Women or the feminine has been commodified by the society at large. And that commodification can be also seen with Mother Earth. We see it as a resource center, not as a mother. So when we commodify the feminine in our house, when we commodify the feminine in our community, we commodify the entire world. We take it as just as a resource center that needs to keep us providing commodities. So we are just we just leave the human aspect of everything, and that's the reason why the rights are violated. Secondly, if I have to push into it, how to take out this commodification and bring back the dignity that they deserve is by respecting the sacred they are. For example, every life that is born, it is just sacred. When the child is there, infant, it doesn't know whether it's a girl or a boy or anything. It is a notion that is fed into it, and it starts grasping that notion. How about if our education system, how about our cultural values, if starts feeding the system that every life is sacred, irrespective of the costume they are wearing, then this commodification will go off and the rights would be preserved and respected. Each one would take each one as a sacred being. And this is what is missing. When Francesco was talking about reforms, I raised my hand because I wanted to share one more aspect. When we are reforming the organizations, it cannot change if the people in the organizations don't reform themselves. A good country or a bad country is not a good piece of land or a bad piece of land. It's a good piece of land with some bad people or good people in it. And what are those good people and bad people? They are just defined by their values. So no laws, no rights could be really working well if the values instilled in the humans that are making those laws are not working properly. Can you imagine a corrupt lawmaker making a law would ever work? It is like a parent who is lying and telling his child to never lie. It doesn't work like that. So it has to work in this manner where we put an emphasis where this individual is value based, the education system is value based, and the entire systems, whether they are food systems, whether they are law systems, whether they are any systems, they need to look into the prospects and power of values. That would be something that I would like to add.
Thank you very much, Shantanu, also for your complementary points. There is, first of all, someone want to add something also on this question, even though we can move to the other question that has come from the audience.
Perhaps something about care. Our document tells about this and says, the pandemic has also highlighted the gender imbalance in our society. And during the lockdown, the cases of violence towards women increased. Now it is necessary to prevent them from suffering dire consequences in terms of jobs, salaries, social protection. It is necessary to overturn a paradigm that does not take into account the area of care as a fundamental ground on which to rethink human and social relationships. And it is necessary that the program against poverty has as its aim a reorganization both of work and working hours, profoundly affecting the scourge of injustice, also of gender.
Thank you, Elsa, also for this integration. We can see that from several points, we can adding like more point of views that are enriching our vision of the problem. So thank you very much to all. Second question, can we say climate change and COVID-19 is related somehow? I see Francesca want to respond.
I'd like to answer that. Well, first of all, we know that some people suspect that COVID is related with climate change because the mutation of coronavirus in this kind of way is due to the climate changing of our days. This is a scientific point, and I can't say nothing about this point in this way because I don't have knowledge to answer from this sense. But I want to answer to another sense of this relation between COVID and climate change. And let's go back to the first wave in the last year. Maybe every one of us saw an article in our media about the fact that in Delhi, in India, for the first time in centuries, due to COVID and due to the lockdown, people of Delhi could see the Himalaya mountains. Do you remember this news about last year? Okay. Well, this was an important fact because COVID last year showed us how can be a world without pollution, or maybe a world without increasing pollution. So you remember that last year, due to lockdown, just few flights were starting from another part of the world to the other. Okay. And we all saw the improving of condition of climate due to the lockdown. So COVID showed us the world that we want to see in the future in a way, okay? And it showed us that it's possible, that we can slow our moods, our industries. We can slow. Now we had to slow for the lockdown reasons, but if we choose to slow our production, COVID shows us what is the result. So this is, for me, it was an important focus. And another thing is that we can use, as I said before, COVID just like as a metaphor. Let's see pollution as an ill, okay? It doesn't matter nowadays if the ill starts in the USA or in China or in South Africa. We saw with COVID that the ill immediately grows in every part of the world, because every part of the world is connected, economically connected, culturally connected. So we know that every epidemic is a pandemic epidemic, okay? And pollution is like that, it's a pandemic epidemic, involving not only humans, but even plants, animals, environments. but it is an ill, and it acts just like COVID. And so COVID for me is an important metaphor. We fight COVID with vaccines, but with the coordination and cooperation of countries to have lockdowns, to have limitations of flight, to have vaccines. And now, fortunately, we start talking about not having brevets on vaccines in order to diffuse vaccines every part of the world. Well, these are examples about how can we treat the climate change problem. And according to me, COVID can teach us a lot of things. Just in a matter of solutions we have found it together for COVID, and just like about the matter of how COVID and pollution are ills that are involving the entire planet. I cannot imagine an environment illness that does not involve the entire planet at the moment.
Thank you, Alka. Want to add something?
Thank you so much. So I definitely agree with what Francesca mentioned earlier. And the one thing that COVID-19 and climate change have in common is that they both affect the entire world. Now, we can speculate on whether or not climate change caused COVID-19 or if it aggravated COVID-19. But if there's one thing that we can learn, it's this. If we were able to collaborate and cooperate and do whatever it took to combat COVID-19, why can't we apply the same energy to combat the climate crisis? I mean, yes, human greed is a huge factor, but as terrible as the pandemic was, it showed us that if we all work together to solve a global ill, as Francesca mentioned, we can solve anything. So it's a great metaphor, again, but also something that we need to take lessons from. If we don't put in the same energy, we're going to get even worse results, because although COVID-19 was terrible, climate change is going to be worse. So yeah.
Thank you, Alka. I saw also Carla and Shantanu want to add something. Carla?
Thank you. I'll do this quickly. The term actually that has been used a lot is zoonosis, which is actually the effect of having a disease from an animal species jump into the human species. And the fact that now humans are, infringing on biodiversity, it means that a lot of things that we've seen in animals are going to be transmitted to humans. And that's why it's so important to preserve biodiversity, because it's also a matter of public health. And, something that I also want to raise, I think Francesco went over all the points, and Alka as well. It's very difficult to say if climate change has a relation with COVID. But we have to say that, the way we've been dealing with COVID is, again, a great metaphor for how we're going to be addressing the environmental crisis. And one point that I think is very important that we are currently seeing is vaccine distribution. And to actually link that to the global rights discussion that we were having, we are seeing again and again how countries who have money are able to get out of issues or international crisis quickly because they have the resources. But, we tend to forget now, everybody's so excited to get vaccinated so we can get over it, that some countries like Haiti, where I am currently, don't have vaccines at all. And we live in a world that is interconnected. If there are variants in other parts of the world, it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, because you're going to be impacted one day or another. The vaccines that we have now, nothing guarantees that they're going to protect us from other variants that are going to be growing in other vulnerable parts of the world in 12 or 24 months. So we need to have a discussion about how, resources and money can actually buy our way out, and how, it allows us to actually forget about the dignity of people who don't have the resources to actually protect themselves. So that's the link that I would make between how we're responding to COVID and how we're also responding to the climate crisis.
Thank you, Carla. Shantanu also want to add something.
Yeah, Francesco added the good part of what COVID brought to us. And also Alka did that, it really showed us that we are one family. And this is also a proof that we have the same rights and we have the same duties. The reason why I could say that COVID and climate change, they are connected is that look at the amount of invasion we have done into the animal kingdom. If someone says that it has come through the food system, we have invaded them. If somebody says it has come through some other way, we have still invaded them. We have taken their homes. The primary host for the COVID-19 virus was animals. So when you take out their home, they come into your place to live, and then they start looking for new hosts. So this unnecessary invasion of the boundaries is the prime reason that we are facing today. The first is that because we do not respect each other's right, we do not consider that animals even do have rights. And that's the reason why it is backfired on us. And second very important thing that I would like to put here is that uh, it's good that we all have come together and we are fighting for this. We are trying to cope up. There is a cope up mechanism that is developing gradually. But let's ask ourselves that has any animal species ever gone through any of those diseases that humans have suffered? None of the animals have got diabetes. None of them have got blood pressure issues. They have never got cancers. But we do have all those diseases that those animals have. So there is this clear indication that when we invade, we bring a lot of things back for ourselves which are negative for us. So it is somewhere we have to understand where our limits are. Where do we stop? If we do not ask this question at the right time, then there is no one who can save us, because it is everybody's act. And as we saw, one person's mistake has led the entire world to stop. So where do we stop is the question that we need to ask ourselves.
Thank you very much, Shantanu. Thank you to all for the amazing answer that you gave to the questions. Now let's run into the Talanoa session. We will make 10 minutes to all Talanoa. I will briefly explain how it will be working. So you will be divided into regional breakout rooms, and for each region you will be provided by a document, this Google document, where you can note the discussion. Let's start with the first round on where we are. So you are committed to like feel the where we are part, and where we are stands for the current status. As well, on the second round, where do we want to go? And we have to fill with goals and proposal. And how do we get there? Then we finally fill with methods and strategy. Uh, Now I will launch the breakout rooms. If you are seeing that you are alone in your breakout room, you can join also another one, even though it's not from your region. The idea is to be inclusive and to engage all into the discussion. Yes, we are considering region of the world, but of course every voice is accepted and is enriching the dialogue. So I will launch now the breakouts, and you can join the ones that pertains your region, or the ones that you want to join. So 1, 2, 3. Hello, welcome back.
Agli altri si sono persi? Ah no, ci sono.
Welcome back. Gayatri. Okay, welcome back. Let's go to the second round. That will be about where do we want to go. So objectives, goals, and proposals. So I will open again the rooms, and similarly you can join your room.
Just a thing, Domenico, I think we covered all the 3 questions in the 10 minutes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's make one last round to refine also for the European team, and also the European team can resume the other remaining question. So
Okay, Domenico, can you listen to me? Yeah, do you listen
yes,
to me?
you have
Okay,
to you have to join.
I have to leave in 5-10 minutes most.
Okay.
Okay.
Just the time to refine the last question, and
The first one, you mean where we are?
no, the other one, the other two one.
The other
Let's
two are,
jump.
okay.
Let's jump into the room.
Okay, okay. Can you give me the invitation, please? Okay.
Welcome back. So welcome back. Here we are. So we finish in 2 rounds. That's good. We save some time. Okay. So now let's report what we have did into the breakout rooms. Let's start with the Asian team. If the spokesperson of the Asian team wants to report your discussion and your points. If you want, I can share also the screen.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, so
I haven't gone over it, so sorry if there are some grammar errors.
Okay, so go.
So in terms of where we are, we mentioned that we are still at the coping stage, imitating. Shantanu raised that point. We're currently imitating, but not innovating, which I thought was very interesting. We are still at a stage where we need to educate people and convince people that climate change is an urgent issue. We are also still at a stage where we need to make explicit the link between climate change and human rights. And I think there was a point here about India, about the relationship between climate change and human rights that exist. And we are still struggling to understand how equity plays a part in climate change. Now, where we want to go, where we want to come to a point where climate conferences and discussions are not needed. I think it was more pertaining to the fact that we all agree that it's an issue and that we all agree on, how we can actually get to our objectives. So it's a no-brainer, basically. We want to get to a point where there's better implementation of ambitious policies. We talked a lot about how, we've talked about solutions, we're talking about laws, but they're not actually implemented. And we want to get to a point where this is, actually respected. We want to get to a point where youth has equal opportunities to take part in the decision-making process, and also have more power to hold leaders accountable. We want more representation of people who are impacted by climate change in the policy-making process. And how do we get there? Well, we need to foster more strength within human beings and empower them to be hopeful. We need to focus on education. We don't have enough knowledge about climate issues, so education is a good weapon. We need to focus on inclusivity or inclusion. We also need to spread the points on climate problems and climate laws among civilians so they can actually take part in the whole process. Foster honest, transparent conversations about money and climate finance. Petition to strengthen the climate laws. But that's incomplete here. Inclusion of indigenous knowledge in the fight of climate change, and customized solutions. So solutions are reflective of local realities and what's already being done in our regions instead of copying what's being done elsewhere. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. There's someone that wants to add something or ask something for the Asia team. Okay, if no, I will take the part of spokesperson of Europe because Francesco has left, and of course he is greeting all of us. So regarding where we are at a no-return point, and we all know that we have to act for the future generation, but we are still in late. talking about human rights in general, in Europe, there is a good situation in one sense regarding the law and just system, but in another ways, there are lots of lacking in legislation regarding human rights, specifically in women rights, migrant rights, LGBT communities rights, and in general, we are making dramatic step back on the different people rights, because as you can also see from the news, there are a lot of rising of xenophobic and homophobic movements and also governments, and we are also losing intermediate bodies and institutional places to discuss and to foster true democracy, the implementation of human rights. We are focusing more on individual, and we are losing the sense of community. In the sense on where we do want to go, of course, I want to try to accomplish the lacks that we had on human rights, especially on gender equity and equal rights without discrimination about sexual and emotional orientation. We want to revise the refugees mechanism in order to consider also climate refugees and migrants, and to assess climate laws that can recognize climate crimes and climate justice. We want also to move towards from an economy of exploitation to an economy of care, and from generativity against consumism. Regarding on how do we get there, we reprise a little bit the thesis that it's important to reform also the global governance, especially the UN system, because it's important to, first of all, assure the participation also of all the countries in the decision making, and also engage youth in decision making, because they can also give more solution to the leaders that actually they are not able to take the good decision. Because there is no laws of the form, it is useful to foster a democratic process, and to turn into coercive ways and coercive power the climate laws in order to make an impact. And that's basically the thing that we stated for Europe. I don't know if Elsa or anyone want to add or ask something. Okay, if no, I think that we can close this third and last session of these Talanoa dialogues inside the open dialogue of climate change. The only thing that I want to mention is to visit our pages, both for open dialogue of climate change. Now I will share my screen briefly to showcase the pages, and also the Climate Social Forum. We are also making the new edition of Climate Social Forum, as I said, and you are kindly invited to join. So this is the Facebook page of Open Dialogue on Climate Change, and this is our website, Climate Social Forum. We have also the version in different languages. You can see the video, and you can also join us if you want as a volunteer, speaker, and so on. I will share also the link into the chat. So saying that, I will close the session. I will thank immensely the speaker, because that's been a very, very insightful question. Thank you very much, guys. The recording will be available online, and I'll share with you, and feel free to share whatever, because it's full of content, full of hints, full of precious insights. And thank you very much, and see you next time on these channels. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.